Hello, Spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
Oh my god, my ears are ringing. I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz,
Hello.
And today we have a very, very, very special guest.
Indeed, there's not enough varies to cover the specialness of the guest we have.
You make it sound so, awful.
No, I'm being sincere here, because we have none other than Spooky Mom joining us for episode 110. Welcome, Spooky Mom.
Thank you. Hello, spooky friends.
I can just hear everyone cheering right now. I can put in a clapping track and all that stuff in the background, but that's okay. I'll let you do it on your own. So full disclosure, right now, Robin and I are packing to head to Mexico for vacation. So we're like, we need to think of a topic. It can't be something half-assed. It needs to be good. What have we had in our back pocket, though? And I was like, there's one thing that we've had in our back pocket. And I came home and she was sitting on the couch. I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I don't think I have any stories to tell. And I started naming off some stuff. She's like, oh, I guess I do. So, Spooky Mom is going to be joining us for this very special episode 110. I got a list of stuff that I thought of that I know about, and hopefully it triggers some memories, and perhaps you can bring up some other stuff if it just comes up naturally. Before we get into that, though, it's January. You know what that means. January Patreon push.
Why do you have to make that sound at the beginning every single time?
Just more fun to do it. January Patreon push is the 1 month out of the year where I come to you repeatedly and just say, go over to patreon.com/scaryish and sign up for a monthly donation. They sincerely help us out. They get us to the point where we can go travel. Last year we went to the Winchester Mansion, Winchester Mystery House, met up with some spooky friends, and it was paid for through our Patreon because we sincerely cannot afford to foot the bill. We travel very rarely. It's actually very rare that Robin and I take a vacation, so going to Mexico has been kind of stressful for us. And we're like, should we be doing something for the podcast? Should we be doing a reach out? And we're trying to make sure that we can have these donations go to stuff like meeting you folks, traveling, going to the Stanley Hotel, which is a big goal for us at 150 patrons, and other things like that. If you donate $1 a month, just 4 quarters, you get ad-free content, which everyone's getting a preview of right now, and you also get early content. Every episode we do is going to come out early.
Right now, there's 20% off of our Etsy store, too. So if you guys are thinking about getting pins and you're like, no, I don't know if I can afford it, 20% off is a pretty good chunk of that price. So you can go ahead and check that out.
Indeed, it is. There's a lot of tiers as well. We have tiers for a bunch of different stuff. At $10 a month, we have stuff that comes out every season or every 3 months with a new design that Robin makes herself. She designs it, she makes the materials, and she ships it to you, which is pretty amazing.
I mean, I don't make the paper or anything, but
she makes everything. She makes the cardboard, all the box she ships to you. No, not really.
It's all printed on papyrus.
But yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing, and we have tiers that go even above that, and every tier includes all the things that came before. But like I said, they start at as low as $1, and they really do help us keep the show going. More importantly, it keeps the show growing. So please head over there and do that. All right, we got the plugs out of the way. Let's get to this part where we get to tell stories. I think Spooky Mom is a little bit nervous. Can we disclose your actual first name, or is that something you want to keep hidden from the public?
Oh, no, that's fine. You may disclose.
My mother's name is Linda, so we are interviewing currently Spooky Mom, Linda Diaz. So, all right. We ready to just jump into it?
Yeah.
All right, the first thing I have on my list, I have some things on my list here that I'm like, I know about this stuff. I want to get some more details on it. The first thing I have is my sleepwalking. So I think everyone that's ever lived with a sleepwalker has a few creepy sleepwalking stories.
I'm very glad you don't anymore.
Yeah, I've grown out of it. However, one of the 2 ladies at the table had to deal with it the entire time I did it. So I remember a few instances of being yelled at, mostly by Dad. Let's just put that out there. In the morning, because I used to creep you guys out. So do you have any vivid memories of me sleepwalking, or when it started?
When it started, you didn't always sleepwalk, but you would be screaming out in your sleep.
Those are the night terrors.
God. Yeah.
I don't talk about them often, but yeah, I definitely did have those.
He used to scream?
Oh, yeah, he'd start just... You'd argue with him. I'd go into his bedroom and he'd be screaming, and I'd have to talk him down, and he was actually asleep. And after that, he used to get up, and he'd come into our bedroom, and he'd wake me up so many times during the night. It led to very bad mothering moments because I wasn't getting good sleep. It was really bad.
Luckily, I couldn't remember any of them.
That's terrifying.
I think the earliest memory I have of the sleep terrors, or night terrors / sleepwalking, was I fell asleep in my bed and I woke up on the couch downstairs. When we lived in Shawnee, when we lived in Portage, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
And I was just like, how the hell did I get down here? And I was like young. I was probably like 5 or 6, maybe. And I just remember Dad yelling at me like, why'd you sleep downstairs? You're not allowed to sleep downstairs. And I was just like, I don't know. Yeah, that's my most, I should say my earliest memory of sleepwalking.
When I'm having my memories of you screaming out in the nighttime all the time, that was in the house before Shawnee.
I didn't even remember that house.
Yeah, that was a rental house. That was on Brant Street in Portage.
How old was I when we moved to Shawnee and Portage?
You were already in school, right?
I honestly don't know. I think I might have been in like junior kindergarten, which is what my school called preschool.
Oh, I was going to say, what is junior kindergarten?
Yeah, I think you were junior kindergarten because you did kindergarten at Kyle, right?
Yeah, Kyle Elementary in Portage, Indiana is where I went to kindergarten and first grade. And then after first grade, we relocated.
When we moved to Valpo.
Yeah, and I remember that move, like moving our stuff from the house on Shawnee to the house in Valpo. But I don't remember any other houses before that, and I know I was alive in most of them, but I don't have memories from them. So all these things started in times of my life I do not remember, which is weird. Like, what's the earliest memory you have? Like, when was your first memory, as far back as you can go? Like, I know they kind of get...
Taking naps in preschool?
They get fuzzier as you get older. Like, I feel like I forget more and more from, like, the earlier parts of my life. But even when I was, like, a young teenager, like, I could not remember a lot of stuff before Shawnee. I still can't to this day. And I'm pretty sure we were only there since I was, like, maybe 4 or 5. So I don't know when memories are supposed to kick in, though.
I remember getting my first game system, the Super Nintendo.
I do remember that, too. I remember my Super Nintendo. I bought it with birthday money. I had it down to the penny. It was, like, $158 and some change, and it was out for a while, and I bought it at Toys R Us, and we were building our house in Valparaiso, Indiana, and we stayed the night, and we didn't have carpet yet, and me and my brother laid down there in sleeping bags in the living room, and we plugged it into our TV, and we were so impressed that if you hit power, the Super Nintendo just turned on, the game didn't give you a bunch of problems. We were like, this is the greatest thing ever, and we played Super Mario World, like, all night.
I remember, I remember, like, being in an apartment before the apartment where I got the Super Nintendo, and my parents, like, got Easter baskets for us or something.
How old do you think you were?
I was probably, like, preschool, or maybe a little older than preschool, because other than that, and, like, my dad used to work at, like, Pizza Hut and stuff. Other than that, I don't really remember a lot.
I remember when I was 3 years old.
What?
3 years old?
Yeah.
What's the memory?
I have a couple of them, and they're mainly based on stuff that happened with my siblings. So
I know one of them.
My dad built our house. So the way I was brought up, my grandfather bought a huge chunk of land, and they all lived in Chicago at the time. And in Indiana, he bought a huge piece of land, and then he divided it all up between his kids, and they built homes. So I grew up on, we called it the property, and we all had different houses there, but all my cousins and I ran around, and so I was really close to my aunts and uncles. But when my dad was building our house, we actually lived in my Uncle John and Aunt Polly's garage. Their house was right next to us, so they had that whole garage set up. It had a kitchen, and the rooms were divided with blankets, and the kids had a bedroom. And I remember when I learned how to climb out of my crib. Because
I feel like that's really early memory stuff.
Yeah, my older sister Lenore freaked out when I climbed out of it, and she was screaming for my mom and dad. And they thought that she's
a narc is what you're saying.
Oh my god.
Aunt Nora ratted you out.
Well, all those beds were really close together, so I'm sure I was having a great time bounding out of it and probably jumping on her. And then my mom and dad thought that she was lying to them. And so they put me back in there, and I climbed right back out again.
Wow.
So you proved her correct.
Yes.
That's funny.
That I remember. And then I remember another incident with my younger sister, Marie. And
This is the one I was thinking of.
She is 3 years younger than I am. And I remember when my parents brought her home from the hospital, and she was in a cradle in this garage. And I wanted to see the baby, and there was nobody else around. And I reached up onto the cradle, and it was, one of these old-fashioned low to the ground.
Swinging cradles.
Rocking back and forth cradles made out of wood. And I pulled it down to take a peek at her, and I pulled it down too far, and she rolled out onto the floor. So we always tell her that's what's wrong with her to this very day whenever something happens. But yeah, I remember my mom freaked when that happened.
I can't. That's definitely scary. That's not scary-ish for a new mom to walk in and see 3-year-old daughter just dumped like
dumping the new baby onto the and you know it's a
baby.
Garage, so it's a concrete floor. So
that's why
maybe a little piece of carpeting on top.
That's
of
why
it.
Aunt Ree's so tough. All right, so let's jump back into, since we've done earliest memory stuff now, because I can't remember when Night Terrors and Sleepwalking started. I know that the house in Valparaiso, which was the main house that I grew up in, there were a couple of instances of me, as creepy as it is, being at the foot of your bed while you and Dad slept, and you woke up to me in the room. Do you remember either of those?
I don't remember you sleepwalking in that house. I remember it being earlier in the other one. I remember when you were really little, and I think the reason I remember it is because you woke me up so much that I would be like
livid.
Oh, I would be so mad. It would be because you know what you used to do. It was so cute. You used to come in the room and you'd look at me. I'd be asleep and I'd wake up and there you'd be right in my face and you'd say, "Oh, oh."
That means
Oreo.
Yeah.
He wanted Oreo
and
cookies.
he still loves Oreos
every day.
Robin made the mistake of leaving a bowl of Oreo cookies on the counter.
I put like 5 Oreos in a cup because I was gonna pour myself some milk and go back to eat my cookies.
Can you bring me my bowl of Oreos? So
No.
Sure.
No, I went into the kitchen to grab my cup of Oreos, and there were only 2 Oreos left.
That's a lie. There was 1 left. I took 4.
Oh my God.
I took all but 1.
I would know better than to leave my Oreos anywhere near him.
I was like, what the fuck? And this isn't like when he's a lot. This was like last week.
Yeah, this was recent. So yeah.
You Oreo.
I'm a monster.
You're a cookie monster.
I am a cookie monster.
He's a cookie monster.
All right, so the next thing I have on my list here is an incident that occurred, I think, when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. And I remember this one pretty vividly. So I know my sleepwalking thing is stuff that's like in the ether of childhood. And of course, sleepwalkers typically don't remember the stuff they do when they sleepwalk. But this one is a little bit different. So talk about the night my dad crashed the Mazda 626, the red Mazda 6. Yes.
We always called it the 626. I love that car. It wasn't in the evening, it was during the day. I think it was a Saturday because it was the weekend. And we had been up for a little bit and I had taken a shower and we went downstairs and I think he went out to go and get some breakfast somewhere. And he asked me if I wanted to go. And he was also going to go to Blockbuster just to get a nice little... It'll give you a little, it's like a time warp here. But I told him no, I didn't want to go because my hair was just all over the place and I didn't have any makeup on and the effort would be too great to make myself presentable to mankind. And I said no, I didn't want to go. So I stayed home and off he went and he was going to go do movies and get some food and come home. And he'd been gone for quite a while. And I was just laying there watching TV, laying on the couch. And all of a sudden, there was this smell that hit me. And I'm like, what in the world is that? It was raining outside. This was our new house that we'd had built in Valpo. And there were problems with it here and there that they had to come back and fix. One of the problems was the sliding glass door and where the floor met up with it. They hadn't finished that off properly. And it was raining outside, so I thought, I wonder if the rain is coming in right there and maybe it's wet. Maybe I smell the glue. It was a smell I had never smelled before. And I was trying to locate it. And I got up and I was looking everywhere for this smell. And I went over by that door. It was bone dry.
What I remember being a kid, too, is you went into the fridge.
Yeah.
And you started smelling all leftovers and all lunch meat and all that stuff in the fridge. That's what I remember as being like, something weird's going on.
Yeah. Because it's like, did somebody open the door and something's bad in there and the smell wafted out and came up? I looked everywhere for that smell. I just looked anything that my brain went to that I could think of. What in the world is this? I never did figure it out. And a short time after that, I got a call from your dad, and he had been in a car wreck. By the way, we then named that road Crash Road.
Yeah, that was Crash Road for us after that.
Yes.
Forever.
He had, and it was a good thing that I hadn't gone with him, because he had come over the hill, and if I remember right, I think there was a tree across the road.
Yeah, he swerved to avoid a tree.
And he swerved to avoid it, and he went off the road, and it was heavily wooded right there. And
when she says, excuse me, heavily wooded, like Robin's seen it before, it's a 2-lane road, 1 lane one way, 1 lane the other way. For folks that are not from like Northwest Indiana, I always forget how bizarre it is, but like the road gets to the end of the road where you typically have a shoulder, and it's like about 6 inches to a foot of grass, and then like dense woods so thick that you couldn't walk between the trees. Like that's how densely forested it is on Crash Road.
Right.
Wow.
And he went off the car went off the road, and the foliage went through the window on the passenger side. So had I been in that car,
that seat was completely demolished.
Yeah,
That's like some Final Destination type of like, oh my god.
And when he had that happen, the airbags went off. And I can't remember if I went to go pick him up there.
You did. Because we went with you. Me and Vince went with you.
Okay.
Me and my brother went with her.
And when
she
we
wanted
got
to
up to
alone.
that car, I smelled that smell.
That's so
It
creepy.
was the smell of the airbags.
I remember this story vividly because it was so scary because he had been in a car accident and we didn't know if he was hurt because he was always... My dad is always super vague, no matter what. So, like, there was a time when his car broke down and he called us and his cell phone was about to die, and his response was like, my car broke down, and she asked him, like, where are you? And he said, somewhere where I don't know where I am. And then the fucking phone died, and it became like, the search for the dad, and we had no idea where he was.
How'd you find him?
Well, he told me he was on the way to Michigan City. And he used to just, like, go out for cruises in his Corvette.
He was in his Corvette, yeah.
And he was out cruising around in his Corvette. And that was when we had cell phones, but they were huge bag phones.
Oh,
and
gosh.
He had
Oh,
called,
my
and
gosh.
he had... What phone did he have?
So
we had two phones. And
I'm trying to think of what it was like when you say how do you even know your phone's going to die? Because there's no LED screen on it.
The great big bag phone you could just plug into your cigarette lighter.
But the car was dead.
God.
But his car died, so...
Oh, my goodness.
But we still had another cell phone. It must have been... Did we have two bag phones?
It was in your car. It was one in your car and one is his
I'm
in his
trying
car.
to imagine this bag phone, and I've never seen a bag phone.
It's like a purse. It's like if you were to take a large purse and stuff like a rotary phone into it. It's almost exactly what it would be like. But okay, so we're on a different topic now.
Okay.
But yes, my brother and I went with her so that we could check and see like if he was okay. I remember you freaking out because you smelled that smell.
Yeah.
And years later, on a different road that's only like about a mile away, I got into a car accident.
Did you smell the same thing?
She didn't come to that one. I don't think. She might have come to pick me
Oh,
up.
yeah, I did come to that one because it happened during the airing of 24.
Yeah, she was
and
pissed.
I was really pissed off that I had to
Back
stop
then, there was no
watching it.
TiVo.
Yeah, but I called her and I told her, like, just so you know, to start the call, you never want that call. Just so you know, I'm okay, but it wasn't my fault. Someone pulled out in front of me. I didn't have a stop sign, and it was icy. It was in January, so I couldn't stop.
It was bitter cold.
So I hit him, and my car went up in the air. It came down and collapsed into a ditch.
It went in the air? Did it
the
spin?
The rear end went like over 45 degrees up in the air.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But
Because
my front
it
end
stopped so abruptly.
Yeah.
It was like...
Right.
And then
Right.
it twisted in the air, and I twisted at a 90-degree angle, and the ditch was about like 5 to 6 feet deep. So my ass end came down into that ditch, so it went from like, 7-8 feet in the air, all the way down into 6 feet further down than the ground into the ditch, and the car was just absolutely destroyed. And so I'm sitting there in the ditch, realizing like, holy shit, that just happened, and the airbag, when it deployed, like I had my arms locked out. I know I've told this story before, but my arms were locked out on the steering wheel. Like I refused to crash into that steering wheel, and when the airbag came through, it didn't reach my chest or my face. It had to get through my arms, so my arms just had rug burn like you wouldn't believe all over them because of the friction burn from the airbag. But there's dust on an airbag, and it just flung it in my face. And the smell was so horrific. It was this smell of panic, and I remember thinking, like, this smell is powerful enough to be smelled by anyone that knows me because I had to get out of that car. That's how bad it was. So when that happened, I instantly thought, like, oh yeah, I guess this kind of makes sense. Like, this is right around the area where my dad got into his car accident, and it's yet another incident with airbag smell. So that one was bizarre. I remember that one when I was a kid.
That was really, really, really cold. I think it was below 0 outside, and we had to go. I don't know if your dad was home or if it was just me, but it wasn't that far from the house. But I had to just sit there and let Adam come into the car just to stay warm while the police were doing the investigation and making their report out and everything. That's how cold it was.
That's
Do you remember
crazy.
where we showed you John had his car accident? That pole, remember we pointed it out to you?
Yeah.
Same road, but down.
Just like half a mile further.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with this
Why didn't we name that one
area?
Crash Road?
I don't know. Because Dad's happened first, that's why.
I mean, with John's, you said he was like covered in blood.
John's hand was covered in blood. John severed a tendon in his hand. We're way off the rails. John severed a tendon in his hand, and he reached out and he touched his girlfriend's face. He was trapped in a mangled car. And he reached through the window and touched his girlfriend's face. He's like, I'm fine. I just need to get out of here. And the EMT showed up and cut him out. Ironically, my cousin Ryan, who was the person who saved my life when I fell in the pool, was the same person that cut my friend John out of the car. But his girlfriend came to my house and knocked on the door. And I was like, I already knew that it was John. I had this horrible feeling. I had this premonition. Like, I saw the lights from our house. Like,
yeah,
that's
we were
someone
looking
I know.
at him from my office.
I drove down to the roadblock. And I took our camera so I could zoom all the way in so I could try and see the car because I was so convinced that's someone I know. And I couldn't tell. I was like, you're being insane. Go home. I went home, and then there was a knock on the door, and I answered the door.
It's
and
just
it was
a girl covered in blood.
It's a girl whose face was covered in fucking blood. And I was like, holy shit. She's like, that was John.
Oh, my God.
And I was just like, oh, my God. They got him out of the car, and they took him to the hospital. He's fine. We're going to see him tomorrow in Mexico. So.
If he makes it
out.
No,
at this point, it's not tomorrow. It's going to be like we've been spending all week
when
with
you're
him in
hearing
Mexico.
this, yeah, we're in Mexico right now relaxing with John. Or we're dead and our planes crash, which would just be crazy if you're listening to this and we're already dead. That never happens. So
I've been watching Final Destination, dude, and that is
not a
funny.
documentary, just so you know.
It's not funny. I've watched every single one. 1, 2, 3, and the Final Destination.
This is what Robin does to prepare for plane flights. So
and Tremors.
Okay, yeah, Tremors though, that's okay.
And Resident Evil.
We'll be
I've
off
been
the
watching
ground.
like all these horror-ish movies.
All right, so that's Dad's car crash. The next one I have, and we've kind of alluded to this before. We've never heard it told in full, basically. So there was an incident before I was born, I believe, when you were, I think at the time, just dating my dad.
Cute.
And you were staying at his place, and one of his friends came over to the house. So yeah, I'll let you take it over.
So this happened when I was dating your dad, and it was at his apartment, and I used to go over there and stay with them all the time, and he went to work, and he used to tell me all the time, don't let anybody in when I'm gone. And well, I wouldn't.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes his friends would stop by, and I might talk to him for a couple seconds, and off they'd go. But there was a knock at the door, and I opened the door, and I'm always really careful when I open the door. Remember, I worked for the court system too, so
we'll get to that too.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. So anyway, but I'm always very conscious of such things. But anyway, I opened the door, and there's a guy there. I had never seen him before, and I won't use his name, I guess.
Yeah, don't.
But he said, is Vince here? And I said, or he said Vincent, because I think everybody called him Vincent. And I said, no, he's not here. And I just had this feeling of intense evil. It was very, very palpable.
That's like super specific when you say like, this was evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just knew not to open that door, and I just put my foot against it, so I don't know why. I just had all these self-protection things
like right
going
behind
on.
the
Like just
door?
the way I was standing by it, and it was only open a couple inches. It was not open real big.
So your foot, you just stuck it like right behind the door, so if he tried to push it,
Yeah,
it
so
wouldn't...
if he pushed it, it wasn't going anywhere, and
Okay.
I'd have a chance to get it closed again. And I talked to him for a couple minutes, and I told him, that he was at work, and he told me, oh, okay, well, tell him that I stopped by, and I'll try to get a hold of him again. I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And he left, and I got that door shut, and I made sure it was double locked. I made sure everything was locked up. There was just something about that guy that gave me the creeps. And he was a nice looking guy. He was perfectly
polite.
a perfect gentleman. He was fine, but it didn't matter. There was just something about him when I opened that door. And later on, when your dad got home, I told him, so-and-so stopped by here, and the look on his face was like, you didn't let him in, did you? I said, no, I didn't let him in. I said, and I got the creeps. I said, that guy just gave me the creeps. I said, I just made sure that I was going to be able to get that door shut. And I told him everything we just discussed about how I had held that door when he was there. He told me that guy, they had some kind of a gathering at that apartment, and his apartment adjoined with his brother's apartment, and they both had their own doors that would go to a little bit of a stoop that then went into the basement. And so that, it wasn't one great big apartment, it was 2 apartments. Mm-hmm. But that guy had been accused of raping his own sister in that apartment. And I don't know if it was actually in your dad's apartment or in the basement, but somewhere right there. And I never had heard the story. Nobody told me about him. I had never heard his name, but there was just something about it. As soon as I opened the door, it was just these vibes came rushing in at me. It was creepy.
When you told me this one, I went to lunch with Dad a few weeks later, and I asked him, and a lot of stuff I'll ask my dad, he does not remember, There's certain things where it's gone to the ether of time or whatever. But when I brought that up, he knew his name. He knew the address of the apartment you were in.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is the party that happened. We had the door open and everyone was walking in between. His sister was there with her boyfriend.
Oh, no.
And for whatever reason, that guy got super jealous, and he did that. That did occur. And, he was taken to jail for it, and eventually, charges wound up getting dropped. But he said, that's 100% true. That absolutely did happen. And, he absolutely validated that story, on the spot. I was like, holy shit. He remembered it start to finish. Every single detail.
That's crazy.
The exact same thing.
And they had never told me about it at all. Never mentioned it. So for me to just get those vibes off of you, you get vibes from some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one's fucking crazy. So I have a couple of things, because I knew that was a really intense story. So I have a couple of things that I just want to break out of the seriousness before we get to a couple more. So you're actually one of the biggest supporters of the show, which is pretty awesome, because we did Nerd Chills, and Nerd Chills wasn't really your forte, and I don't blame you, so no big deal. But
it wasn't really our forte.
It was my forte, whatever, it wasn't good.
It was not good.
So it was fun, though. I like doing a new show. Anyways.
I don't know. This is much more fun for me.
I like doing this show just as much, if not more. But
no offense, Nerd Chills.
So this show, she's very super supportive and active in the community. And I've said this before, too, she edits our emails. So we sincerely read the emails for the first time ever on the show. That's not just some gimmick. That's not just marketing. That's not bullshit. That's true. And until we started doing them live, we would just read them. And if there was something inappropriate, we, would just take the email out of the show, which happened very rarely. But because we started doing them live, we didn't want to be caught off guard and have something go out live and have it be awkward. So we said, we need to get someone to proofread these, to edit these. And she volunteered. She said that she could do it, which she does for free. She does it in her spare time, which she doesn't have a lot of, because you still work. You work from home. You're very, very busy. So you go through the emails. Every single one that gets read really does get proofread by her first.
Or Marie. She's done a couple.
Or Marie. My Aunt Marie, when she's out here, she'll help us with it, too. So being someone who's had their eyes on every story that we've done, I wanted to ask you, what is it like for editing? For folks that are I'm going to send an email, and this is going to hit Spooky Mom's eyes first. What are some tips that you can give folks to make it easier for you to edit?
Probably the thing that would make it the easiest to edit is just to read through it when you're done.
Just a quick proofread.
It's just a quick proofread of your own, but they're really not that bad.
I'm going to say paragraphs. And just press enter a couple times after a thought, a big chunk thought, a thought chunk, I don't know, because otherwise it's just one huge block of text.
Yeah, we do get giant blocks of text sometimes, and I send it, and I'll tell her in the morning before I go to work, so I sent you emails, and she's like, okay, and I'll tell her, one of them's kind of rough. It's really long, and there's no punctuation, and there's no paragraph breaks. So I will say that one on your behalf. But there's a lot of times where you tell me like they weren't bad. So, and I know this one just most recently that was sent in by, I think it was Tyler. You said it was like super funny and you laughed like all the way through.
I was cracking up through that one.
All I know was the Hamburglar. I don't know.
Tyler's name is the Hamburglar on Twitch. Are there any ones that are your favorites that you can recall off the top of your head?
I think they're all good. The thing that made me laugh the most in that one you were just talking about was In His Mind's Nose.
Yeah. That one's so good.
I was just laughing out loud at that one.
Right on. And being a fan of the show, which I think you are, I don't think you're just saying that because you're my mom, but realistically, what's been your favorite topic that we've covered so far?
When you were doing the stuff about the Cubs.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
I always get entertained when I get texts, when you text us and you're like, this fact, or like...
Adam, you said this wrong.
What was the other one? When I talked about the person living in the attic, and you were just like...
Oh, I was screaming, no! I was telling them that years ago when I was 18 or 19 years old, I went to Hawaii, and I swear to God, I think they had HBO at that time. If it wasn't HBO, it was cable, where they played movies that you would never see over on the mainland.
Yeah.
And I saw a movie when I was there, and it was called Silent Night, Deadly Night, which they just remade, by the way.
It's not supposed to be good, but they did just remake it.
But
it came out on Friday the 13th in December.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
It scared the hell out of me. And when I came back, I was telling everybody about it. This movie was so scary and so frightening, and I told everybody that, they've got to see this movie, and I would look everywhere for it.
Was there someone living in the attic or something
there
like that?
There was somebody that was living in the attic of a dorm home for girls who were going to college, and he was just killing them off one by one. And I could not even be in a room that had an attic entrance to it. That's how scared I was all the time.
So when she got older, she made sure to put her youngest son in the room that had the attic entrance, i.e. me, for 15 years of my life.
Wasn't there a point where you were sharing an apartment with someone or something?
Yes, I had an apartment. I had a roommate, and something happened. I don't remember what was going on in the area at that time, but I was really, really scared.
Was it like Helter Skelter period type?
No, it wasn't Helter Skelter.
I think it was you were in Texas and there was someone in the area that was picking off blondes or something like that.
Oh, that was when I lived with Marie.
Oh, okay.
That was in Texas. This was when I lived in Indiana. I had a roommate named Shelley. And I don't know why I was so scared. Something had happened, and I don't remember what it was now. But I told her I was just really so scared, and I was scared to sleep in my own room, and I asked her if I could come and sleep with her. That's how scared I was. And she said yes, and I went and I got all cuddled in her bed. And she said, I know something that would scare you even worse than you're scared now. And I said,
oh, God.
What?
Who says that,
And then she pulls a fucking knife out.
And she said, my room has the entrance to the attic. And I said, oh my God.
Were you just like, I'm out?
I did. I left her room and I took my scared little ass back to my own bedroom to sleep because that's how scared I was.
You probably took up too much space and she was like, well, I gotta get her out of here.
It worked.
Oh, so didn't you try and do a viewing of this terrifying Silent Night, Deadly Night movie?
Yes, they were going to finally air this movie on ABC, and I got a bunch of friends together, and this was even a couple years after the Scaredy Attic incident. I had a different roommate, but there were a group of friends, and it was another one of the friends that we were in a new apartment. And so anyway, we were getting everybody together to watch this movie that I had been telling them about for so many years. And just as it was supposed to air, an announcement came on that they were not going to air the movie because something too similar had happened in Florida.
And for those of you who have been fans of true crime, you have probably guessed it, but go ahead and spill the tea, as it were, over what had happened that stopped it from going through.
It was Ted Bundy. He screwed up the evening of being able to watch Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Ted Bundy murdered my mom's dream.
Oh, no.
of airing Silent Night, Holy Night, cuz.
I wonder if you can still watch it. Like that
I'm
OG
sure you
old
one?
can.
one, the older one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
Oh,
out there somewhere.
It's out there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Ted Bundy was down in Florida, and that's when he was killing sorority girls. So it was super, super similar, and it's like, it's so funny because the last episode I talked about the shooting at the Dark Knight and how that pushed back the release of Gangster Squad.
Yeah.
Because so many times it's like something overlaps, like some sort of art overlaps with something that happens in the real world. And what's, crazy about Gangster Squad is that that hadn't happened. They had prepared that trailer and no one had seen it yet. And then, of course, the shooting happened. But when it comes to Ted Bundy, I mean, I've never read anything or seen anything about whether or not he watched that movie, Because it's like a sick mind kind of picks up inspiration from stuff like that. And it was just such a specific movie with such a weird premise for then Ted Bundy to repeat it in such a similar way,
Yeah.
And he had moved from, like, other parts of the country to go down to Florida and then specifically change, like, his MO on who he was targeting was just very, very bizarre to me. So
Did he go to Florida?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
went to Florida.
yeah.
That's where he got
Oh.
arrested.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. I mean, I know I covered Ted Bundy, didn't I?
I think you did. Not 100% on that.
I don't know if I did.
I know that we've
actually.
watched a
I
ton of Ted
It
Bundy
might be from
documentaries.
watching so many documentaries, but I don't know if I covered him or not. I've covered a whole bunch of serial killers and people eaters and things like that, but I just don't remember. Dang it.
People eaters?
People eaters.
Are they purple?
Purple people eaters.
Should
Are they
be.
flying? All right, so since we're in the true crime vein right now, I do want to ask you, so I don't know how many of you know this, but my mother used to be a court reporter for one of the courts in Indiana for how many years?
Oh my gosh, 17, 18 years?
17, 18 years. You were a court reporter, so you've had some crazy
Your
shit.
career as a court reporter was an adult.
Yeah, your
Holy
career
crap.
as a court reporter could vote. But not smoke. That sucks. But
I'm sure they used to be able to,
Yeah,
but now they
but
changed
not
the
now.
laws. Yeah.
so, okay, your career as a court reporter, you had some crazy stuff come through your court. It's funny because I said to her before the show, like, I'll bring this up and we don't have to get too deep down the rabbit hole, but I think it's funny because people right now, like especially now, are so obsessed with true crime. Like true crime documentaries and true crime podcasts especially. And I was like, you didn't have to worry about that. Like, your career was a true crime podcast. You had to sit there and listen to everything that was said, which I'm just saying some of you would probably be really good at this job if you trained in it because you're so detail-oriented and you're so attentive of it. But in your career at the courts, like, what are some of the crazier things that came through the court system?
Well, the craziest things that came through were the murders. I know there was one guy who actually hugged his girlfriend to death.
What?
Yeah, he hugged his girlfriend to I called him Huggy Bear.
Oh my
Wow.
god. That's like my sister when she tells me, like, yeah, sometimes we just have to name these criminals stupid shit to get through the day.
Yes.
Yeah. It sounds like he's Lenny from Of Mice and Men. So,
Of Mice and Men?
have you never read the book Of Mice and Men?
Isn't that a band?
Yes, it is also a band,
Oh.
but it was a book first.
Okay.
You know,
So-
I can't even remember his actual real name.
That's probably a good thing, actually.
There was another one that it didn't happen in my court, but it was a murder that occurred before I worked there as an official. I did deposition work, but I knew the girls up there, and I used to go up and visit. And there was a murder case that had happened. It was 2 young kids kidnapped a girl from a convenience store, White Hen Pantry or 7-Eleven, one of those. And they took her to a home that was being built in a new subdivision, and then an older man met them there, and they tortured that girl and killed her. Recently, Marie was here, and she was talking about a case she was working on now. Do you remember that?
A little bit, yeah.
And she said, do you remember this name? And she said this guy's name. And now this was in like 1991, 1990, somewhere right around there that this occurred. And it wasn't my case. But I remember when she said that name, I said, oh, that guy's a murderer. And she said, well, I'm working on a case right now where he raped a girl. And I said, he raped
Oh
a
my
girl?
God.
He had actually gotten out of prison and he took some girl to go look at a house.
Oh my God!
That was
getting built in a new subdivision.
No, it was next to his brother's house, I think, and it was going to be for rent. But somebody was moving out of it, and there was a bunch of stuff that they'd left behind. And he had told her, I think she was a waitress, and he had told her that if she wanted any of the stuff that was there, as she was walking through and, looking at the house, he tried to hit on her. And she, got away from him, and he was telling her in the garage there were a bunch of boxes that were left behind, and if she wanted any of the stuff in there, that she could have whatever she wanted in there. And as she was kind of looking at things, he started trying to attack her again, and she got out of there. But Marie was just telling that story, and I'm like, that guy was from that murder
that's crazy
years ago.
It's so scary to work in a profession where you see someone come through that committed some horrific act, like just absolutely horrific act of violence, and then for enough time to pass where they come back through. Like, it just so is just an indictment on how we handle things like that, and you let horrible people back out into the world. I think that's something when we listen to My Favorite Murder especially gets talked about, like how little the sentences are for some just of the most horrific things a human being could ever possibly do.
Right. It's scary. It's just scary that these people just repeat the things over again.
Yeah. It's like almost predictable at that point. So, okay. So that's some true crime stuff. So the last thing we're going to talk about, the last thing I want to bring up was something you brought up to me downstairs that I didn't know about, like, at all. So I'll do a little bit of an intro on it, I guess. You know what? I'll let you do it. This is your episode. So talk about Grandma and her current state and where she's at. Just because I think normalization of something like this is really important, and I do think that it's something you have, some of the most experience with.
Well, the current state that my mom is in at this point is, well, she has Alzheimer's, and she's in the end stages of Alzheimer's. So she still can eat, but she can't hold a conversation at all. When I see her, she doesn't know who I am. She can't say my name. But I just feel like she knows somehow that she's loved.
Right.
And that there's a connection.
It's not like she's around a stranger.
Right.
It's like she can't really form the thought or say the name, but it's like she knows who you are, even if she can't articulate it.
I don't know if she knows who I am, but she knows I kind of belong.
She feels the connection still that's there.
Right. But she is, she can walk, she can still eat. My dad takes care of her, and they have a little bit of help that comes in, but that's the stage that she's at with her Alzheimer's right now.
And shout out to Aunt Ree, because she does so very much.
Oh my God.
To help out with it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ree. Because of you, I don't have to worry. She is there every day taking care of my mom, and she needs all kinds of care. If you hand her a phone to look at, she may try to taste it. She's like a baby. So, she has to be handed her toothbrush with the toothpaste on it and help to do every single thing that is a normal function.
So there's a reason I'm not torturing my mother, I swear, or you, dear listener, that I wanted to bring this up. So not just so you understand, like, what can happen to someone that's suffering from Alzheimer's, but you understand the impact of this story now. So another event occurred. It actually occurred right after I moved here. So 2011, 2012. So I remember it because when I was in college, I partied a lot. Like, I did. It was fun. I
feel like you partied before college, too.
I did, but college took a lot longer because of my habits. So when I graduated, I had an open house, and I let everyone know, hey, I'm going to move. Like, I'm going to pack bags in my car, I'm going to jump in my car, and I'm going to drive to the West Coast. And if I can figure out any way I can stay there, I'm moving, and I'm staying there forever. And so people were, like, hit or miss on whether or not they believed I was going to do that, So I had my open house, and a bunch of people showed up, and it was really nice, and a lot of family came out, and my Uncle John came. And my Uncle John and I have or I should say had, a connection a little bit. We didn't hang out a lot, but my Uncle John was very political. My Uncle John's the former mayor of Portage, Indiana.
What?
Yeah, so we would talk about things as they developed and how different they were, and it was always super, super interesting conversations, and it was just like, it's why I like to say, like, talk to your grandparents, like, talk to the older generation, because, like, you have no idea the cool shit they have to say, and if you're not talking to them about it, they're probably saying it about you behind your back, because they're hilarious. So, I would talk to my Uncle John about just whatever, and he knew I was a writer, and back then I still had this dream that I was gonna make it as a writer, you know? That has since been crushed out of me.
I think you're still making it.
Technically, I'm a professional writer. Knock on wood. Who knows what happens when I come back from vacation? My position could be gone. I'm a technical writer, but whatever. So, my open house, everyone gave me booze. I got bottles of rum like you wouldn't believe. I got special rum. I got, like, Captain Morgan, like, secret stock. Like, I just got bottles of booze over and over and over and over. And in college, it would have been, like, the dream, you know?
Didn't he give you, like, a journal to write
He gave me a dictionary.
Oh, okay.
He gave me a, like, first edition, super thick, like, dictionary. That's what he gave me. And no one else gave me anything but booze. So when I packed up my car, the only thing I took from my open house was the dictionary. I left all the booze. And it wasn't me trying to be, like, really symbolic. It was just realistically, like, I'm driving to a place I don't know, by myself. When the fuck am I going to drink, you know? Like,
yeah.
And even if I wanted to find someone who's going to drink, like, I'd probably just go to a bar. I wouldn't be like, do you want to go to the cheapest hotel I could possibly find in California to hang out and drink booze? Like, it clearly wasn't going to happen. So I was like, I'll just leave this here, and if I find a place and I come back, I'll take it with me. So I went to the West Coast. I wound up being in San Francisco for a little while. Shuffled around, couldn't find anything. Wound up in Las Vegas, found some stuff, and it worked out. And I moved here. So when I went back and got all my stuff, I left all the booze. Because I was like, you know what? Like, that phase of my life is kind of, like, not ever going to be the same. And I don't want it to be. Like, this is the next phase of my life. And I took, like, this gift that was truly like a transition into, like, this next chapter of my life. So it was very important for me. And when I got out here, I was dirt poor, like most writers who graduate, and buried in an avalanche of debt. So it sucked. And that's just sort of the struggle you're going to go through, especially during a recession. And he passed away. He passed away shortly after I moved out here. And it was the first time I was like, I can't go to a relative's funeral.
Aww.
I couldn't afford to fly back home. So that said, now that everyone's super sad,
oh my
because
God.
this is just hammering away at your emotions, go ahead and pick it up from how you guys handled it back home.
Well, before I do that, I want to remind everybody, because I talked about it earlier, about the way that we grew up was in this neighborhood where all these brothers and sisters of the greatest generation had built their homes. So they were incredibly close. The family's incredibly close. And we saw each other all the time. So when my Uncle John passed away, it was several years ago, so it was a different stage of the Alzheimer's for my mom. And you could not explain things to her. In that stage, what happens with Alzheimer's is past, present, meld together. So she would think that she was younger and that her mom was still alive. And my grandma's been dead for years, so many years, since I was quite younger. And you couldn't explain that to her. She didn't get it. It just, there was just no sense in even trying. So when Uncle John passed away, Grandpa did not want any of us saying anything to her about it.
Because it was her brother.
It was her brother. It was her oldest brother. He was the matriarch of all the brothers and sisters around there.
Oh, wow.
He had been the mayor. He was the one that was politically involved. He was a school teacher. So many people in the town were students of his. And my dad did not want my mom, her mind, to have to try to deal with that. So he told us all not to say anything to her about Uncle John passing away. And so when we would go over to the house, we would remind one another not to say anything, because it would just lead, it would be bad. It would be bad. The conversation would be horrible, because you would explain it to her and she would not understand it. She wouldn't get it. And then you would just be constantly having this same conversation over and over and over and over, nonstop. So we never did. Not a single one of us, when we went into that house, ever said anything about Uncle John, unless she was in bed, the doors were closed, and we were just talking to my dad. And so right before his funeral, we went over, and my dad was telling us that my mom had told him that she saw all these relatives bringing in dishes over to my Aunt Rosie's house. So the way this neighborhood was set up, there was Uncle John's house, then my mom and dad's house, the next house was Aunt Rosie's house. And when she would look out her bedroom window, she could clearly see Aunt Rosie's house. Well, the thing is, nobody lived at Aunt Rosie's house.
What?
Nobody lived there. It was being used at that time just for storage. Nobody lived there. But my mom told my dad that she saw all the relatives going over there, taking dishes, and they were all over there. And why were they there? Is it because Uncle John died?
That's crazy.
None of us had said anything in front of her. Not one word. And it just, I'm getting the cold chills as I sit here and tell you guys about it. But then when it was time for the funeral, we went to the funeral, and when we were leaving, we were all in our cars, and it was on the way leaving from the grave area, and it was really, really cold. They had a little building there at the cemetery, and we had gone in there instead of it being at the grave itself, I think is what they did. So anyway, when we were leaving there and we were all in our cars, and there's a big bunch of cars, so you're kind of waiting for your turn to go. And I was in my car and Marie was in her car, and she's making a motion for me to roll the window down. And I rolled
when you had to actually crank the window
down.
Well,
no, I mean, this was just a couple of years ago.
It's a motion that's outdated. But yeah, because pressing a button is not really a good indicator to roll down the window.
Doesn't mean, this means roll the window down. So I rolled down the window, and she's on her cell phone, and she's pointing at the cell phone, and she says, "Dad just called me, and he just said to me that Mom just said to him, the funeral's over. They're all going over to have something to eat now."
That's terrifying.
How does she know that?
That's terrifying. How does she know?
How does she know?
That's crazy. Oh my God, that's so... What?
Yeah.
Not only did no one tell her, but she was home the entire time the funeral happened.
And she just
Right,
knew.
she was home with my dad.
Oh my gosh. And it has to be something where she's kind of like connected or something, or there's like a spiritual thing going on, maybe.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just, it's crazy stuff, because, my grandfather, to this day, takes care of my grandmother, and, Robin knows this story. When they met, they were very, very young, and it was my grandmother's favorite story to tell, and when Alzheimer's started to kick in, she would tell it, repeatedly, because it was her favorite story, but it was how they met. And it was about how her family did not initially like my grandfather, because they thought he would never take care of her, He would never be the person that could take care of her. And it's 75, 80 years later, and he still takes care of her. And I just think it's funny, because they all absolutely grew to accept him and love him, and they all grew up around together.
And by the way, he does point out now that he outlived them all.
Exactly. He outlived all of them. So I really feel like that was some sort of message where it's all right.
I think he's the cutest, though, because now he has his Facebook. And
he just got a Facebook.
And he's so good at using Bitmojis. He's the best at using Bitmojis out of all of us.
He's so smart about phones and computers.
And he's 93. He's 93 years old. But it's I really feel like that was one of those things where it's all right, he won. My funeral's over. Everyone's going over. Like, let them know. And so she'll like, just so you know, like, Uncle John's funeral's over. Well, I mean, she wouldn't call him Uncle John, but John's funeral's over, and they're all heading over now. It's like, something about that really felt to me, which I just heard about like an hour ago downstairs, like, that is just straight up someone being like, all right, tell him he was right this whole time. And I don't know. It's just this really spooky, really sad, but really like poignant moment that I feel like I really hope my grandfather took that as like, you are the last one there to take care of her because you are the person who was put here to take care of her.
That's cool.
And he does.
So yeah, like I think that's a good last one to have, because like she told me that downstairs and I was like covered in cold chills. I was like, whoa, I never knew this because I didn't go back for Uncle John's funeral.
I think that's why it's important to ask your family if they have stories.
Yeah, because a lot of times we've mentioned like briefly like, do you want to be on an episode tonight? And like my mom has always been like, I don't have any stories to tell. And I was thinking about it on the way home tonight, and I was like, that's horseshit. She has so many stories to tell. Like, I know so many I can think of off the top of my head, so I brought it up when I got home. I was like, do you want to be special guest tonight? She's like, oh, I don't know. I don't have any stories to tell. And I brought up, like, a couple of them. And she's like, oh, and then there's this one. I was like, I'm putting a microphone in front of your face. Like, go sit upstairs right now. So, yeah. Thank you very much, Mom, for coming on and talking to us and letting all the spooky friends hear all these things. And I don't want to be a weirdo that's exploiting my mom and making her come on here and relive past traumas and crazy things. But I do appreciate it. And you've always been like super supportive of me and the show. And
yeah, you're so. I love when sometimes you're just like, when Scaryish gets big or when you guys make it.
So I do appreciate you coming on and sharing stuff, because you've always been like mostly an open book. Like, if anyone wants to know anything about you, they can just ask and you'll tell them. So it's been really nice to have you on.
It was surprisingly fun.
Yeah, so you'll have to do it again. You'll have to think of other stuff and come on again. And in the meantime, she will still be behind the scenes editing those emails. So if you enjoyed this episode, do Spooky Mom a favor and just read it once before you send it. And so if any of you would like to send us your stories to be read
by Spooky Mom.
By Spooky Mom. Email storytime@scaryish.com. You can also go to our website, Facebook. No, that's not our website. Facebook.
No! Scaryish.com. It's in the title.
Scaryish.com. Click on Contact Us, and you can submit it that way. Or you can go to any of our social medias. Facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. Our Twitter is @ScarishPod, and our Instagram is @ScarishPodcast. However you want to send it to us, please do. If you feel warm and welcome and like it's a safe place to share, which so many of you let us know it is, please send it. And if you're like, I really want to share, but I kind of feel awkward about it, don't force it, you know? I had a friend who waited for 2 years to send their stories.
And it was good.
It was great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with waiting until you feel comfortable. So, Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
I don't know. You were telling us this earlier in the episode, right? January Patreon push. Patreon.com/Scaryish Podcast. Whole bunch of different tiers. Ad-free episodes are on there. Right now there's a 20% discount code posted on there. So if you guys want to do that, 20% off of our Etsy store. You can get the new pins that are out and a whole bunch of other stuff that's Scaryish themed on there or cute themed. You can check it out. There's a bunch of anime stuff on there. Or you can go to ko-fi.com/Scaryish Podcast. Those are one-time donations, and those donations help us upgrade our studio setup, like this awesome new microphone we have.
That I was able to point at my mom, and it picked up the audio, hopefully. So we'll see how that goes in post. But thank you so much, folks, for listening. We appreciate you, and sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you have always done for me, and thank you for coming on the show, Mom.
It's like she knew your whole life or something.
Yeah, almost. So that's everything we have. So, Robin, no. Mom, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on. And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.